welcome to ShareTreck. It's the morning of 18th, and I just saw the latest video from ARK Invest, and they had an interview with Mr. Kulkarni, who is heading CRISPR Therapeutics, and there are some really interesting snippets of conversation that I thought you guys should have a look at. I'm not going to reproduce the entire interview here. This is just to bring this interview to your attention. I'll put the link below. And you can yourself see the entire presentation at the ARK Invest channel on YouTube. It's a longish interview, but it's got a lot of interesting information. So let me cue it up for you, and we'll speak at the end of all the snippets that I think you need to look at.
We know so much more about human biology. We have so many more tools at our disposal. I really do believe that we're going to see a roaring 20s version of biotech over the next few years. And from a fundamental standpoint, I'm quite excited because one, we have many more modalities that are now offering cures as opposed to medicines that just cure symptoms or treat symptoms. We now have at our disposal the ability to diagnose and understand many more diseases than we did previously. And at this point, for me, as we look at CRISPR Therapeutics in the future, it's all about reimagining medicine. I think we completely changed the way we think about medicine over the next 10 to 20 years.
Okay, and I will chime in here. We couldn't be more excited as well, Sam, and yet we're faced with a situation where macro factors are determining the recent course of the genomics companies. We do believe we're in a genomics revolution, and to be honest, it's shocking to see CRISPR Therapeutics stock and other stocks in the genomic space they've been cut by 2/3 and are back to levels that we saw in 2018, 2019, when we were having to go through the CRISPR twin controversy in China. It makes no sense because largely because of CRISPR Therapeutics' success in showing us that there are cures out there for disease, beta thalassemia, sickle cell, and the stock's so much lower than when those success stories came out. I think the problem is fears of inflation and valuation. Valuation algorithms seem to be focusing only on valuation, and it's just been one way down, frankly, and with no thought. It's been indiscriminate, and we think if you are right, Sam, and we believe you're right, that the roaring 20s we will in hindsight look back and say, wow.
If I can add to that, what also if you say, which is to put it all in context, the entire market capitalization of the top 20 pharma companies is 2.5 trillion. And the entire market capitalization of all the biotech companies out there is less than $1 trillion. Combined, it's the same market capitalization as one Apple. If you think about all the advances we're making to improve human longevity, to treat diseases, improve quality of life, that all adds up to a lot more than I think communications and everything we're doing with our phones. And so I think there is a mismatch in how we're looking at the industry overall, how we're thinking about value created. And frankly, I think there's a bit of a lag because people think it's a regulated industry and there's a time lag to value recognition until you get to the market. But I don't think that's the case with this pace of innovation. And I think certainly you'll see more broader recognition of the biopharma field in general. And I think people taking notice of all the innovation because it's more of a patient-centric, it's niched sort of innovation. It's not like you're seeing it on your phone every day. You don't get that broad-based awareness. Obviously, with the COVID pandemic, everyone now has seen the power of what biotech can do for humanity. But I do certainly think that there's going to be a more broader recognition of all the innovation that's happening over the next few years.
So basically, due to the low price of the shares at this point of time, and also a lack of any bump from the JP Morgan healthcare conference, I think this particular video is very timely in order to get the investors of ARK Invest, ARKG, to see the reality of how much of innovations have taken place, how much development has taken place, and why there is value, regardless of the fact that the macroeconomic situations are pushing the price downwards. So that I think this video was very timely and a bit of a genius to put out this interview at this point of time. So let's listen further to what was said.
May I ask a question on that? CRISPR-Cas9 being the workhorse, that would suggest that the original patents, and I know CRISPR has them, should pertain to some of these next modalities, base and prime. Is that correct?
Absolutely. I think the foundational CRISPR-Cas9 patents, based on the work of Emmanuel Charpentier and Jennifer Doudna, are going to be very important for all these modifications. I think you do need the CRISPR-Cas9, whether it's in the form of a scissor to make a double-stranded break, or a nickase, as it's called, to make a single-stranded break, to enable all these advances. Now, it doesn't mean that the new IP that's being generated is not valuable. That's equally valuable. And ultimately, I think there will be, my assumption is there will be cross-licensing in the field to enable these therapies to move forward, not just with one company, but with multiple companies. And that's better for society, to be honest, to not have all the IP resident with one player. But I think the foundational CRISPR-Cas9 IP is what drives all of these innovations. Similar to what we saw in the antibody space. There was Genentech and Amgen, Abgenics early on that started in the molecular cloning and protein production space. And then there were advances, companies like MedRx, Domantis, Cambridge Antibody Technologies all came up with improvements to how you use the protein technology, and they all were relevant as we humanized antibodies, came up with fully human antibodies. But ultimately, I think companies like Genentech took advantage of all the improvements and became the 800-pound gorilla in the space and created transformative value in the cancer space and other therapeutic areas by being smart consumers and applying all these advances to the indications in the appropriate fashion.
So I was just wondering, how should investors and maybe just people who are interested in it think about the Cas9 IP? So those will be patented until, for the next about 10 years. And, arbitration hasn't really yielded any sort of formal decision. So also it takes about 10 years to put an asset through a clinical trial. So, what's your strategy moving forward to, maintain ownership of this IP and sort of to protect it?
Yeah, I think the IP in the space is very important, not just in the form of patents, but also in the form of know-how. If you think about all the manufacturing that we do, there's an art and a science to it. You can have two companies make the same edit in a certain gene. In one case, you have data that's in clinic that looks really good. In another case, it doesn't. Why is that? Because there's the art of how you handle the cells, how you do the manufacturing, and how efficiently you do the manufacturing, and all those come into play, both the know-how and the patents, and that's sort of the basis for one of the bases for sustainable competitive advantage. But if you're an investor, and I'm not an investor, it's hard for me to say, but what I would say is that historically the companies that have done the best and yielded the most returns are the ones that know how to develop good drugs and make drugs that have a transformative impact on patients, whether it's longevity, whether it's to cure certain diseases, whether it's quality of life. And that's the key. I think we want to shape and fashion CRISPR Therapeutics as the preeminent company that is doing the high science, that's bringing the innovation, bringing next gen products, being committed to patients in a certain disease. And if you can make transformative therapies, I think that's where the value generation is. If you take the case of Genentech, for instance, at the time they were acquired for close to $100 billion. They had the foundational IP, and that generated a certain cash stream, and that was about $6 billion out of the $100 billion of value created. The rest of it was the drugs that they made, right? That said, I think on the IP, I hope that in the long run, rational minds will prevail. There are different camps of IP. We certainly claim the foundational IP is the CRISPR-Cas9 space that's required for anything that you do with gene editing or gene writing. But ultimately, I think, to benefit humanity, I think we all need to be rational, and there's precedent for how much royalties are exchanged in the long run in terms of CRISPR-Cas9 IP. But the more drugs we have, it's going to float all boats, and all the companies are going to do well that participate in this with the focus on patients and the focus on making drugs that work.
Sam, can I just follow up on that and on Ali's question?
So I think with regard to the IP, the only thing I'm comfortable about is the fact that the foundational IP might probably stand. But everything else that comes on top of CRISPR-Cas9, any other additional technology like base editing and all that he spoke about, I think those areas would probably just end up paying some royalties. So I also feel that you should have a look at this entire video, because snippets don't do justice. So I just wanted to put these few snippets out here to give you an idea of the depth of conversation that's been had in this particular interview. So just look at the description of this video. I have the link there. Please make it a point to have a look at it, and it will get us all on the same page with regard to how we look at ARK-G as well as CRISPR Therapeutics. But I think that all other companies are also going to be there doing research and coming up with products using CRISPR and as well as base editing. So at the end of the day, whoever does it first and whoever does it best is going to prevail. So there is, in my mind, there is no guarantee that a company which is at the forefront of something is going to be up there. Like take the case of BlackBerry for that matter. They started off and they are nowhere to be seen. And that whole category of phones just went away. So you can form your own opinion. Go to the website and have a look, and I'll meet you again during our daily update session. I'll post another video today just on the technical analysis bit. And thanks and have a great day. Bye for now.